Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Regional Development Assessment Panel meeting of the 12th of November. My name's Tony Owens and I'm the presiding member. I'll introduce the other panel members. Francesca Lafante, who's the deputy presiding member, and Clayton Heim, who's the specialist member. In relation to Part B, Shire of Harvey, we have Councillor Carboni and Councillor Campbell. From the DAP Secretariat, we have Kristen Parker, Secretary, Ashley Kelly, Governance. We have a number of applicants and representatives from the Shire of Harvey also. So with that, I will formally declare the meeting open at 9:31. I acknowledge we are hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Wajak people of the Noongar Nation and are joined by people from other lands around the state. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2024. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A. So item 2 is apologies. We have Neil. Item 3, members on leave of absence. We have Neil. Item 4 is for information noting of minutes at previous meetings on the DAP website. So we move to Part B of the agenda, Shire of Harvey. One is declarations of consideration. Panel members, are you able to confirm that you've duly considered the documentation within Part B of the agenda and Part B related information? Just raise your hand if you're able to make that declaration. Thank you, or duly declared. Item 2, disclosures of interest. We've got none to date. Just a reminder that standing orders requires local government members to make a declaration if the item's been considered at a council meeting. Not the case?
Not the case.
Right, noted. Item 3, Form 1, DAP applications. We have Neil. Item 4 is Form 2 DAP applications. We have Neil. And item 5 is Section 31 SAT reconsiderations. And we have one item, and that's item 5.1, Lot 28, Tradea Place Pile-Up, and it's for workers' accommodation. We have 3 presenters, and I just remind presenters you have 3 minutes. So please focus on those matters that you consider most critical, and after that will be question. Just for everyone's benefit, obviously this item was previously considered by the panel. It was deferred. It was then listed for review with SAT. There's been a number of mediations which are confidential, but on the basis of mediation, we're here for Section 31 consideration. So with that, Steve, are you going to kick off?
Please,
Steve Allardy.
Thank you very much, presiding member and panel members. I wanted to firstly thank the DAP for their engagement during the mediation. Sorry, I'll just move over here. Yeah, that's all right. I'll just move in front of the camera upright. Sorry, Mark. I'm just going to move your. Sorry, I'll start again. So I just wanted to thank the DAP for their engagement during the mediation, which we found to be both positive and constructive. Secondly, I wanted to remind the DAP of the importance of the facility because there is a significant challenge to resourcing major projects in the southwest, and to facilitate growth, companies like Catalana Green Energy need to attract employment from places like Perth and the eastern states and provide suitable accommodation for them. And if approved, the project will underpin a number of other significant green energy and infrastructure projects in the southwest that will be key economic drivers for that space. Turning to the RA, the Shire officers appear to have narrowed to two principal remaining issues. The first is environmental protection associated with the Chewits, which Martin Bowman is here to speak to shortly. And the second matter is bushfire and access, and Tom Hockley and Lynn Weirs will also be able to respond specifically to those matters. I just wanted to touch on a couple of higher level points in relation to the environmental matters and one other matter. First, in relation to the environmental matters, it's important to restate what has occurred under the environmental process. The proposal has now been reviewed by the EPA, the appeals convener and the Minister for the Environment, who have all determined that the proposal does not pose any significant risk to the environment. Since the RDAP's last meeting and following our mediation, we've now prepared a Chewit and Native Protection Construction Management Plan and an Operational Management Plan. And these demonstrate how the proposal responds to and addresses the EPA and on Minister's determination, which was really the remit following the last meeting. The Shire have reviewed the management material, and with one exception related to the fencing around the Chewits, which I'll say is lightweight, above ground, and it's non-invasive and does not pose any risk to the Chewits. The RAR does not raise any other concerns with the proposed management measures. So we seek to further modify conditions 8 and 9 to have these management plans specifically listed within the conditions, as opposed to a requirement for the Shire to approve. And we'll come to that when the discussion around the conditions come through. With respect to the overall picture of the Shire questioning the environmental suitability of the proposal, it's important to state that it was the Shire who advised us that referral to the EPA was necessary because they did not have the in-house capability to provide environmental advice or assessment. Despite this, they've now sought to instruct the DAP as to how the environmental matters should be considered, I might add, without providing any scientific evidence to support their conclusions. What is clear is that from the determination by the EPA that Chewit protection was considered, because the Chewits are also significant to protect state assets, and if there was a risk, this would have been clearly enunciated into the EPA's determination. So we're confident that the management measures are designed not only to ensure the Chewits protection, but they've also been designed to ensure that we can facilitate a proposal where we don't have to remove any trees. So we ask you to place your weight on the determination by the EPA and the Minister and not on that of the Shire. The other matter I wanted to raise isn't raised in the RAR as an issue, but it was raised by Councillor Carboni. It's the final matter regarding protection of basic raw materials. And it's important to correct some of the information that was offered to Councillor Carboni by the Shire's planners at the last meeting. We represent many extractive industry operators, and we're very aware of the importance of BRM and have specifically sought to protect BRM in our proposal. And a question arose at the last meeting as to the neighbour's objection. With respect to the objection, whilst an initial submission expressing concern was received, following engagement by Catalana with the operator to explain the proposal, we were advised the objection was in fact replaced with a non-objection. So to suggest there was a standing objection was not accurate. Secondly, the appeals convener also considered the protection of BRM and concluded that because of our management measures, the deviation from the generic separation distances provided was warranted because any risk to people residing in the workers' accommodation was minimised substantially by not being on site when the extractive industries were operational and the surrounding vegetation providing a noise and dust buffering capacity. So hopefully, casting that light, Councillor Carboni, you may be able to see your way that this addresses some of your concerns. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Martin, if that's okay, to go through the environmental matters in more detail.
No problem. I was going to ask about conditions, but we'll come back to at the end of the presentations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks, members and presiding member, for the opportunity. I have made a written submission and I've had the opportunity to read it. Perhaps I've only got 3 minutes, which is enough, I think, but to reiterate the fact that, firstly, the statutory assessment background. The DA was put to the council with a full disclosure of the environmental conditions at the site, including the fact that there was a Chewit forest on the site that would be classified as Chewit Woodlands and Forests of the Swan Coastal Plain TEC. With that, the proposal also provided a design and management response which would see those tuarts protected in accordance with their status. That protection mechanism derived from the fact there is sufficient space within the tuart trees for the new structures to be installed without imposing on the tuart trees canopies, not one single tree to be cleared, and no development under the drip zones. That was put forward as a way of ensuring that the values of the tuart forest would be protected. The council decided it did not have the expertise, as Tony said, to assess it, and therefore was referred to the EPA. The EPA determined again that there was insufficient risk for the proposal to be formally assessed with reference to tuart forests and woodland, the Swan Coastal Plain, and their secondary role or their equivalent role as habitat for western ringtail possums and black cockatoos. This EPA's decision was appealed. The appeals convener, yet another independent body, looked at the processes that the EPA had followed and the conclusions they'd made and found they were valid. Followed proper procedure and had reached valid conclusions and recommended to the minister that the appeals should be dismissed. The minister accepted that, and not forgetting that it's the minister's prerogative to either accept or reject that advice. So we have three independent bodies agreeing with me that there was no significant risk to the tuart trees. Now, the second point about referral to the EPBC, and there seems to be some suggestion that it's not a matter for the EPA to consider. Well, there are two facets to it. It is a state asset, but not only is it tuart forest, it is habitat for western ringtail possum and 3 species of black cockatoo. And in the event the EPA had the view that there was a risk to those species via habitat risk, then they had every opportunity and had the prerogative, in fact, the requirement to formally assess, and that did not occur. Now, I just want to pause again on this matter of tuarts. The tuart forests of the Swan Coastal Plain are threatened because they have been cleared, completely removed at the 80 to 86% level by agriculture and urban development. Now, it is improper and invalid to translate that into a notion that the tuart trees themselves are particularly sensitive. And at this point, I'd like to present the slides. I don't know how to operate this, but the arrows.
Yeah.
There. Keep going. I just want to give you, right, that's what the tuart trees look like at the moment. On the parkland cleared, they've had stock under them for 50, 60 years, and they're doing quite happily. That's just showing you exactly what they look like at the moment. Now, the notion that the tuart tree is a sensitive tree is not supported by evidence. In fact, it's quite the contrary. The evidence suggests that tuart trees are robust. Here, and I think some of you have seen these photographs before. That is a picture taken on Stirling Road near Capel. Excuse me, the trees in the picture are tuart trees, and that road has been in place for about 50, 60, 70 years. You'll note that the pavement goes right to the base of the tuart tree, it covers the root zone, and those trees in the background as well have been very happily surviving for all of that time. There is another shot from the site itself where there is a limestone road where sand and limestone product has been hauled across that road, compressing the soil, changing the hydrology. The tuart trees there are 30 to 40 years that's been going. They're very happy. They have not been affected by that change in circumstance right up to the trunk. There is another picture on Stirling Road. The suggestion has been that tuarts could somehow be harmed by pruning. Well, if you see the tree in the first, in the foreground, all of that tuart forest has been pruned to protect road safety. And that's been going on for years. And the tuart trees are very happily surviving, and again, with pavement and with pruning. There is another example. There's two trees. On one side, there has been sand mining. The soil profile has been removed. There's a whole road next to it. The soil circumstances there have been very significantly altered. The trees.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Wrap up. Last picture. There's one that's had soil removed 30 years. Half the root system exposed. Tuart tree is just doing very happily. That's really all I've got to say, is that the notion that tuart trees themselves are sensitive and that a fence outside the drip zone could somehow harm the tuarts is incorrect. The tuarts can be assuredly protected, and the EPA has decided that, the Minister, the Appeals Convener and myself. So thank you, members.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Thank you, Presiding Member and panel, for the opportunity to speak today. I'll be speaking in relation to the draft conditions and the remaining bushfire-related matters. Also got Lyndon Weers attending via Zoom today, who co-authored the bushfire management documentation. So firstly, on bushfire, it was positive to note in the RAR that the elements 1, 2 and 4 have now all been addressed and accepted by officers. The final matter relates to element 3 and specifically acceptable solution A3.2a, requiring the 2 points of access to 2 suitable destinations. We note the recent examples approved by DAP with similar legacy access non-compliance characteristics, which were resolved through the provision of on-site refuges. Rather than providing a comparable form of development to the current proposal, these 2 industrial proposals in Collie were referenced as evidence that the use of on-site refuges have been accepted in the absence of a second compliant off-site access route. Current proposal has been assessed as a vulnerable land use, but supports such innovative bushfire management solutions because the proposal is similar to a vulnerable tourism land use, although the occupants will typically remain on site for either 2 or 5 week periods and will regularly return throughout the year. As such, occupants will have greater awareness of the site conditions, will have access to private vehicles, and will be able to mobilise for off-site evacuation as a primary bushfire response at short notice, or relocate to the refuge as a last resort measure. As outlined in the BEEP, the decision to evacuate occupants to a suitable off-site destination will be made well in advance of a bushfire threatening the site, more than 20 kilometres. And in any case, occupants will be off-site during the times of the day representing the highest bushfire risk. For these reasons, occupants will have less vulnerability to bushfire risk compared to a conventional tourism facility, and will be accommodated within a facility within a safe and innovative bushfire management regime tailored to the characteristics of the site. So moving to the conditions, our response to draft conditions has been included at attachment 7 of the agenda. That response still reflects our position with the exception of conditions 8 and 9, as Steve mentioned. We have prepared a handout outlining the basis for amending amending condition 8 and deleting condition 9, which I'm happy to provide to the panel. But just in short, the construction management plan referenced in condition 8 can now be adopted as the Shire has not raised any issues with the management measures, apart from fencing, which Steve has addressed. And in relation to condition 9, the surveying requirements referenced in condition 9 are dealt with the construction management plan, essentially making it redundant. And in any case, condition 9 in its current wording is incorrect as it requires in-ground and above-ground infrastructure and improvements to be located outside crown drip zone of all trees on site, rather than specifying crown drip zones of tuart trees. I'm happy to talk a bit more about that if there's questions about that, because there's a bit of a nuance in the way that the survey is, I suppose, proposed to be undertaken in relation to tuart trees and non-tuart native trees, if that makes sense. I'm happy to provide the written the written response to condition 8 and 9 if it would assist the panel when we come to discussions about conditions.
Or we can read out.
Or we can read it out. Yeah.
Kristen, are you able to provide a copy to the local government members?
We've done some hand changes to, we could actually photograph it and mail it.
Yeah, you just need to give it to everyone, just so we can share it.
Oh,
So
yes.
that people with-
The alternative is we could just read out the changes if it's easy.
Probably be better if,
If you can't email, like, just want to give it to me and we can scan, I'll get someone to scan it in, but it might just take a couple of minutes for us to do that.
Thanks, Ashley. Thank you, and that's it for me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
so members, we move to question time for the applicants. Are there questions?
I have a question. My question is to Tom. My question specifically in relation to element 3, A 3.2. You talked about the occupancy of the facility, and in particular you talked about risk levels, citing that at the highest, most significant period of time, people would be off-site and therefore would be less impacted by such matters. I'm interested to hear your comments in relation to risk factor in the evening, during night, and that's one of the elements that they talk about in the documentation, the DFS documentation, in the planning documentation, particularly given the requirement for notification or sounding alarms, etc. And it is specifically in relation to sleeping and the risk that bushfire creates. Can you speak about that? Because you did specifically refer to it being less impactful in what you cited as the highest period in the day. And I'm interested where you get that position from, and any comments you can say in relation to also the what I would contend a equally risk space being overnight while people are sleeping.
Sure.
Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, thank you for the question. And look, as I mentioned, we do have Lyndon online as well, who's a BPAD level 3, and he co-authored the documentation with me. So if we can get Lyndon on the call as well, if you want to jump in to answer or expand upon anything that I've said. So in relation to the so I'll start with the daytime first. So the hottest parts of the day are obviously in the sort of midday through to the afternoon, and the point I suppose I'm trying to make about people not being present on the highest risk part of the day is that in the hottest part of the day, workers will be off-site at their place of work, which I suppose limits the exposure to occupants at those hottest parts of the day, which would arguably be, I suppose, the highest risk parts of the day if there was a fire threatening the site in close proximity to the property. What happens at night is that there's more moisture in the air, which means that the actual, the fire won't burn as hot and potentially won't travel as fast as it might do in the day when there's less moisture in the air. The air's drier. There's the fuels are, I suppose, more combustible potentially. So that's the link we drew between the daytime characteristics of the environment and nighttime characteristics. In terms of the I suppose the operations and the management of the facility after hours when everyone is on site, one of the elements that aspects that we incorporated into the operational management plan was to actually introduce the requirement to have a caretaker being present on site after hours. So that was to deal with a few different things, behaviour, I suppose queries and inquiries coming in from the workforce accommodated on site, whether people are arriving to site after hours, those sorts of things. But it also helps in terms of the bushfire evacuation response, because what you'll have is essentially a fire warden on site who will be able to, I suppose, raise the alert if there is a bushfire within 20 kilometres from the site, keeping in mind that the bushfire trigger warnings for evacuation are tiered. So when you've got a fire that's detected beyond 20 kilometres from the site, you've got the choice to either evacuate or plan to evacuate. When it's between 20 and 7, I think it was 7 and 7.5, that's when you start to think about actually evacuating everyone on site. So there's quite a long period of time between when the bushfire is detected and when evacuation is, I suppose, prompted to occur. And so the benefit of having the caretaker on site will be that they'll have everyone's numbers available. They'll be able to notify people and coordinate, an evacuation response. Firstly, account for everyone down at the muster point at the on-site refuge there, and then make sure everyone's got a vehicle. If they don't, provide an opportunity for someone to jump in to another vehicle and evacuate off-site within, quite a significant amount of time before the bushfire arrives, basically. So, that was the general idea around, one of the benefits, at least, of having the caretaker on site at night. What was that?
I think Lyndon.
Yeah, sorry, I realised I was muted. Ultimately, A3.2 is trying to avoid any single points of failure with access, and whilst that hasn't been able to be achieved because of legacy road connections here, there's an on-site refuge which could be used. It's more likely to be used during the day where there's more propensity for fire, as Tom indicated. The conditions are much more, what's the word I'm looking for? The chance of bushfire ignition and development and growth and spread is obviously much more conducive during the daytime hours, where the temperature and moisture are, at their lowest and highest. That said, you can't. There are fires that do ignite, often through lightning and things like that at night. But the chance of quick spread is generally not as likely. However, you still end up with the need for either the 2 access routes or the on-site refuge in this case to deal with all those all those situations, which enables. Obviously, if there was a 2 access routes from the site, they'd be able to leave in 2 different directions. In this case, they would still have a place of relative safety to go to on site, should they not be able to get off site in a timely manner. But all those things are a lot less likely to occur at night, where the conditions are not conducive for bushfire spread.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up question then, Tom. Your comments were based on the assumption there's only one shift, a day shift, and then they're all back at night time. My understanding was this facility might be used by other businesses, and therefore you might have different shifts rolling through the day, maybe even at night time. So how does that translate then?
Well, I suppose the proposal as we've put forward has always assumed a daytime shift arrangement where the workers accommodated on site will be out on
Regular
their
hours.
daytime shift and regular hours between 6 or 7 in the morning, returning, or 5 or 6, whichever one it was, returning between 5 and 6 in the evening.
So there may be some workers who are unwell and stay back.
Yes, that's
the day.
a possibility.
Yeah.
So there may be a need for the caretaker to be there.
The caretaker will be there.
Mm.
For that reason.
I think there'll always be somebody on site, won't there? So, regardless, there would never be a case where there's absolutely no one on site. So whatever measures are in place need to be suitable for some people, because there will be some on site, But I think that the refuge has been sized for the assumption that everybody will be on site and some additional. So I think the fact that, you know, if there was nighttime operations or you know, any changes to those underlying assumptions, I don't think anything really changes with the on-site refuge in that sense. It's still suitably sized for the peak, anticipated peak occupation at the site, so it assumes everybody's there. And you know, regardless of what time, it should be available at all time, provided there's somebody outside to, you know, unlock it, I suppose. So
I think the point Clayton's raised is a relevant one. My assumption is like all these workers' accommodation sites, they're managed and they have to be managed, not simply from a fire perspective, but just livability perspective. So can you confirm that that is the case?
That is the case. So there'll be, from memory, there's six daytime staff will be present on site at all times, and that would include like I suppose a site manager, the cleaning staff. And so the way the evacuation management would work is that you have designated fire wardens. So at night it would be the on-site caretaker who would take on the role of the designated fire warden, but then in the day that responsibility would shift to the site manager, something like that. And they would be trained in the same, you know, evacuation response as the nighttime caretaker.
I would be interested from anyone of the group in some further commentary. You started talking about condition on the alternate recommendation, and you were talking about some changes. I'm interested to hear further what you alluded to discussing. If you could, any one of the team, speak about that, please.
I can do that, Tom, just briefly. So condition 8 currently requires the preparation of a management plan to the satisfaction of the Shire. Point of our response to the conditions, we hadn't seen the RAR. So we didn't know what the Shire's position was. The Shire have obviously reviewed the management material and they have provided their comment in the RAR. The only issue they've raised is in relation to fencing, but as I've explained, the fencing is really a non-issue. No other issues have been raised, and so to try and provide the bona fides of the proposal, we're quite comfortable if the DAP is comfortable with the management plans themselves to have the management plans that we have already prepared and provided to the DAPs included as part of the condition. And those will be live for the duration of the approval. The only thing that the management plans do not currently include is a requirement for a photographic survey of the site in its pre-development condition, documenting the condition of existing vegetation, which sort of came out after our responses. We were looking at it. So what we have proposed is an alternative wording for condition 8, which essentially inserts the management plan as the management plan, the one that we've prepared dated the 4th of October, as amended with a requirement to include a photographic survey of the site in its pre-development condition, documented existing vegetation. And the second part relates to the deletion of condition 9, because again, the matters that are addressed in condition 9 are already addressed in the management plans will be included as part of condition 8.
Yeah. And probably the only other point to that is just to close the loop in relation to what we're saying about our proposed wording of condition 8. That was really to capture the last remaining requirement in condition 5 that we're asking to be deleted. If you see attachment 7 of the RAR, that lists the conditions and our original response to that in a table. And one of the conditions in that list of conditions, 5, which talks about a pre-development audit report. And we're asking for condition 5 to be deleted on the basis that the photographic survey or the audit of the site and its pre-development condition can be dealt with as part of the construction management plan, that condition 8.
So through the chair, all the conditions in that table, all the requested changes in that table remain, except there are some differences with 8 and 9.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and the changes to 8 and 9 are up on the screen. Apologies for the the scratchings there, but essentially we're asking for condition 8 to be replaced with the condition on the screen and condition 9 to be deleted. So just to read condition 8, the Chiltern Native Vegetation Protection Construction Management Plan submitted before October 2024 shall be implemented for the duration of the approval as amended with a requirement to include a photographic survey of the site in its pre-development condition, documents in the condition of existing vegetation. Apologies, we were doing it on the run.
Just a point of clarification on the wording of that condition. That assumes that the local government is satisfied with the management plan as submitted.
I guess the first test is whether the DAP is satisfied with the management plan. We provided it in advance as part of the mediation process for the very reason that our proposed measures were put in upfront for consideration. They have obviously been considered by the Shire because the Shire have commented on the management plans in the RAR. So on the basis of that, we believe that the management plans should be adopted in their current form with that amendment that we referred to in condition 8.
Okay, but the normal course of events is that a condition would require a particular plan, and that would then be to the local government satisfaction.
And that's normally if you haven't prepared the plan in the first place. So we've prepared the plan in this instance so that everybody's had an opportunity to review the plan for quite some time, and the Shire have obviously reviewed it as well. But our view is if the DAP is comfortable with the management plan, then we're happy to have that. We believe the management plan is suitable to address the issues that were raised with us that came out through mediation and as a response to dealing with the Minister for the Environment's matters that they wanted to ensure would be addressed through the planning process. So we've adopted those obligations under the management plan. And so I do concur with you, presiding member, that normally it is subject to an approval of a third party, but that's normally applies when you don't actually have the management plan in place.
The other question I had about conditions, and I was just going through the council's recommended and the schedule. Dealing with the management of the actual operation more broadly, normally with workforce accommodation, there is an operation management plan, which is different to construction management and vegetation management. Might be interrelated, but different. It's more about the conduct of the personnel, perhaps.
Yes.
I can't see there is a condition related to that.
We have prepared one, however.
We've prepared, we've prepared an operational management plan. You're right, presiding member, there isn't a condition requiring the implementation of the operational management plan that we have prepared. So the operational management plan is included attachment 5 of the RDAP agenda. And again,
we'd be comfortable for a condition to be imposed, requiring that to be implemented for the duration of the approval.
Right, thank you. So did the local government members get?
Got a copy shared on the screen at the
screen,
same
okay.
time as
All right.
you all saw it. You want us to put it back up again?
Councillor Carboni, Councillor Campbell, you understand the proposed changes for condition advocated by the applicant, for condition 9?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Councillor Carboni, Councillor Campbell, did you have any questions to the applicant? The matters raised?
I do. I suppose my only concern at the moment, and the board has already touched on this, is in regard to the assumption that the higher risk of fire is during the day. I'll remind them that Yar Loop in 2016 was taken out at 9:40 p.m. at night. So I do have concerns about the evacuation process and the fact that there is not that second access road from the site. has the applicant looked at any alternate or additional roads or access from the site? Is that possible at all?
No, it's not. Member, unfortunately, this is a legacy non-compliant single point of access. There are no opportunities to create a new road to the north or east from the northern extent of Treadray Place. The idea is that the on-site refuge that's been planned for and designed within a Bowlow area, separated by quite a large area of managed grassland between the nearest bushfire-prone vegetation, will provide and I suppose a place of last resort for the site and its occupants in the event that a bushfire is threatening the site in close proximity. As I mentioned before, the way that the evacuation plan has been developed, it does allow for a very long duration of warning time prior to fire actually reaching the site to enable off-site evacuation up to either South Yunderup or down to the off-site shelter in place location in Bunbury. In the absence of the second point of access, those were the measures developed and put forward for consideration. And that, Lyndon, is there anything you want to add to that?
Oh, not especially. I think, certainly the emergency management procedures are, off-site evacuation as a priority. It's not to say that bushfires can't impact at night, hence the need for these mitigation measures regardless.
In terms of bushfire and the facility on site, can you outline where such facilities actually exist currently in lieu of alternative access?
Yeah, so I mean the genesis of all this is there's a legacy non-compliance, and the acceptable solution says to provide a suitable destination or access to 2 suitable destinations, and so that's what we've done. The on-site refuge is essentially the same as what you would do for a vulnerable tourism destination. So it's the same specs as that, and in fact has probably got a larger APZ than you would other require for that. I'm personally involved in the process of doing one in Collie at the moment. So that's being stepped through at the moment as part of an industrial facility. Look, the on-site refuge is largely coming out of tourism acceptable solutions, and because they haven't been around that long, there haven't been too many actually implemented at this stage. So I think that's an evolving field, but I'm aware of a number that are happening at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Members, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that the refuge is purely that, a standalone facility. It's not being utilised for anything else.
I believe it's a recreation building as well, and there's nothing that precludes that it can't be used for that, as well as provided it meets the requirements of the standards for a refuge building.
Look, in DFES's comments, they reference the use of on-site refuge as providing for a place to shelter and providing a supply of food and medical equipment to essentially wait out the bushfire front. And so that's exactly what this is providing. It's providing occupation space for, I think, up to 126 occupants, something like that, Lyndon. Yep. The actual square meterage of the building is greater than the minimum requirement under the AB CB guidelines for on-site refuges, and it's more akin to, I think, Class 9 building under the NCC. So we're providing more space than what's required. And yeah, I mean, as Lyndon said, there's nothing precluding the use of the building for another purpose. But I think the site is going to be pretty well equipped with other external recreational facilities that will probably be more sort of heavily utilised compared with the on-site refuge.
All of the ones I've seen or know of are all nobody's building a bushfire refuge building. They're building a building that can be used for that they're up-speccing to meet all the requirements.
All right, thank you. Members?
I have another question. My question is environmental. Again, anyone can answer it from the applicant team. You'll look at the beginning of the agenda. There's a recommendation to affirm the refusal. There are a series of reasons for that, and in particular, I'm talking about 2A, B, C, E, F. And I'd like you to essentially provide a comment. And I note that you have a construction management plan and operational plan as part of the material we have in the RA, but I'm interested in a fairly succinct summary or comment about the operation actions that would ensure the development does protect the environmental assets. And these are a series of concerns or reasons for the RA recommendation reaffirming the position of refusal. And I'd be interested for you to talk specifically about, I'm not so much looking for the information about the construction. I note the information's there. I'm interested in your comments about the operation, which according to the material we have will continue for a 15-year period. Can you speak to that specific point about your comments on this proposal and why the operation of the activity will not impact the environmental significance and why therefore the development in your view is appropriate in this context? Could you speak to that? Very long question, I appreciate.
That's all right. Two elements. Resident education as to the values of the site, caretaker surveillance of human activities, and this notion of building within the community a sense of how to protect the environment is something that's across the community, and there is absolutely no reason why that should not be part of the induction and the advice given to occupants about what behaviour is expected. And of course, for a whole range of reasons, for questions of public safety, public occupant behaviour towards each other, towards the environment. I think that's an important facet to realise. And I'm concerned that there is an assumption that there would be some deliberate cause or motivation on the part of a resident to cause harm to the environment. I don't know why we would expect that to occur. So with the education that there are values on the site, with the appreciation, and of course, the whole objective of this is to provide a living place in a natural setting. And that natural setting can be appreciated for its landscape and its environmental values. And I think it's very easy to build a case within communities with some education about the values of native fauna. I think people have a genuine interest in it. I don't see why we would expect the residents to not have a genuine interest in participation in protection of the environment of that site. It's a common community matter. I live in Dunsborough. There are many, many community organisations who seek to make it public and seek community support for the protection of, for example, western ringtail possums. And there is a great deal of community uptake and interest in that. I don't know that we would expect the workers to be any different in regard to their capacity to be educated about the values and the importance and to obtain enjoyment from the fact of the Tuarts being in existence, the fact of the Western ringtail possums being on site, the fact of the black cockatoos using the site. In my experience, people are very interested these days in protecting the environment. And I guess I'm not so cynical to expect that people would deliberately seek to harm the environment. I don't know where that would come from, particularly with the point of education of the values. And, you know, I've seen a number of community organisations where, for example, a retail possum might take up as a mascot or as an icon or as a badge of we live in Treadray Workers Accommodation Village, and one of our objectives is to protect the environment and enjoy the natural resources that are there.
So I don't suggest that people would deliberately or otherwise seek to do that. My question is more around those individuals that are on site, as well as the caretaker on site. There would be the questions around controls and information too. And it's based on the assumption, it's based on the principle from my perspective that I'm not assuming that anyone would seek to do anything, but I'm also not assuming that anyone would have any specific unique knowledge about the site and the flora and fauna in that area. So I'm not suggesting one way or the other. I'm saying if you are not familiar, a local, and you're not familiar with the environmental elements of the site, what are the controls, obligations to ensure that those matters as identified, particularly they are grounds for determination or recommendation on the RA at the beginning, the concerns are around those environmental matters. So that my context of the response. And I'm happy for you to continue.
I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, I think there's stuff in the operational management
We
as
have
well.
got it. So it's probably worth elaborating on the inductions, and it's probably also worth elaborating on just the management, and also I'll touch base on something after you've spoken.
No problem. Yeah, so the operational management plan and the document I'm referring to is at attachment 5 of the RAR. So section 7 deals with the induction process. So when when workers attend the village, they're provided with I suppose an induction dealing with the overview of the village services provided, behavioural expectations, including protection of native vegetation and fauna, transportation arrangements, bus departures, returns, and emergency management procedures such as bushfire evacuation and medical resources. And so in the operational management plan, the actual management measures for flora and fauna management are outlined in a fair bit of depth in the document, and it deals with...
You're referring under 5.6?
Yes, 5.6. So it talks about, you know, the one of the objectives, or the prime objective being the protection of tuart trees and native fauna habitats within the site. With regard to the tuart trees, an arborist will be engaged every 2 years to evaluate the health issues, and you know, in the event that there are health issues, they undertake appropriate treatment measures to protect the trees from possible future health detriment. In terms of the fauna, for example, it's recommended that fauna management plan is administered. The detail of the fauna management plan, like the specific detail of the fauna management plan, hasn't been fleshed out yet, but we have provided a structure for a fauna management plan and the types of considerations that the management plan might include, such as objectives, scope and procedures, schedules, roles and responsibilities, and reporting. So these are aspects that have been, I suppose, born out of discussions that have occurred since the last DAP meeting, and I've tried to just be as I suppose as thorough as we can in relation to those environmental management considerations on site. Probably the only other thing to add to that, I think you're talking more about the ongoing operations of the site, right? Yeah.
So I think that the first branch was that we wanted to protect them during construction. That's the first component, and I think that's clear how you can physically demarc them. We've also obviously created pedestrian paths and paths for vehicles so that there's no uncontrolled access. But in terms of human interaction with the trees, I mean, I don't think we would want to stop people from going and touching a chewit. I mean, at Kings Park, for example, we've got thousands of chewits, every national park. They're not to see. I think there's been a heightened degree, I think, in the reporting about the sensitivities of the chewits, and they're not as sensitive, I think, in terms of the human interaction with them. And we would actually want the workers to be able to walk under the trees and just enjoy the lifestyle that's going to be there. What we do want to do is to stop behaviour that might seek to actively damage it. So I don't think a passive use of them is something that I think, Martin, is it fair to say? I mean, you've identified that they are trees that they're not supposed to be kept away from people. They seem to interact well with human interaction.
Kings Park's full of chewits. It has black cockatoos. It has western ringtail possums, and
we don't seek to keep people away from
them.
Absolutely
not. No, we want them to interact.
We want them to interact with
and
them,
understand.
But we do want to make sure that people aren't going to be putting swings on them or things of that nature. And I think that's where the induction processes will ensure that none of those more invasive type actions that might occur with an individual won't take place.
So my last question is, I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to have the question. The occupants have use of their private, semi-private space, which is the dwelling or the accommodation, and the car port, and obviously the access point, and all other spaces are communal under a more stringent management in relation, or an obligation in relation to the site management, in relation to the operators.
That's correct.
To ensure there's protection.
Yes.
Sorry, they're my questions.
One quick question on the operational management plan. What's the date of it?
That is a good question. I think so. It was submitted on the 4th of October.
Can't see one.
Yeah, but no date. So
submitted on the 4th of
October 2024. Yeah. Apologies.
Those are my questions I have.
Members, any final questions of the applicant? No? All right. Thank you. We now move to the Shire of Harvey officers. Got Benjamin Bogle there. Benjamin, do you want to make any overall remarks about the application before we get into questions?
Not necessarily about the application, more so comments about what the applicant just mentioned in their deputations, if that's possible.
Yes.
So I just had really two main comments, specifically regarding the EPA referral. The first being that the Shire, following our own internal review of the application and following comments received from the community, we actually went to the applicant to state pretty much that we had the intention of referring it ourselves based on those comments and that internal review. And then the applicant then undertook the self-referral themselves. So it wasn't necessarily based on a lack of internal expertise, just more so on that internal review and community advice. The other aspect being with regard to the EPA determining not to assess it. So that was pretty much the EPA undertook a referral under state legislation, and the Shire pretty much maintains that it requires or warrants referral under federal legislation. The EPA fairly well seconded this by saying that, or by reminding the applicant rather of their obligations under the EPBC, but we disagree that the EPA referral states that it's okay under that federal legislation. So that's pretty much my only comment, but yeah.
Benjamin, thank you for those clarifications. Members, questions of Ben?
Yes, I have some questions. My questions go specifically to the reasons for in the beginning of the agenda. And I am interested, particularly you start with a comment that it doesn't represent good decision-making and proper order planning principles. And there's a series of reasons that are around the environmental assessment and protection. Can you talk to the following two matters? One, what are you expecting from the development? And two, what actions have you taken or the Shire taken in undertaking or engaging others to do an environmental evaluation? I note that we've got a reasonable amount of information from the applicant. Can you talk us through, you may have done it in the first meeting, but I wasn't part of it. Can you talk us through the Shire's actions in relation to undertaking or engaging third parties to do these specific environmental evaluations? Because I note they are significant reasons.
Yeah. So in terms of our actions, what we did, it was mentioned in the previous AR, but we undertook obviously the agency referrals, trying to get their expertise on the matter, specifically with DWER and DBCA. Following conversations with the EPA, we also spoke to the DCC EEW on the matter, trying to get their review of it. Obviously, they can't invite a application, but they too basically informed the applicant of their obligations. We haven't sought any third-party business or anything like that to review the environmental, but those referrals and conversations with state and federal departments is essentially what we've done on that matter.
So I suppose it leads to my further question, which is and I appreciate that the Shire has done their referral. The agencies that you've been referring to who have provided commentary on this proposal is consistent in relation to the concerns, or that they've resolved not to undertake the detailed assessment, and the applicants provided some commentary in relation to those matters. But I'm interested why, in the absence of that, given that it's been once to the DAP, it's been through the SAT process, and we're back in front of the DAP panel, and the significant concerns that environmental matters that the Shire is raising, what is your expectation on addressing these matters? I mean, who do you expect will address them? If the applicants provided their response, the agencies have essentially provided commentary in terms of what they'll do in relation to a referral. Essentially,
our expectation, although we are aware of essentially the responses the agencies have provided and the applicant, I believe our final hope was essentially a referral under the EPBC. Obviously, it is up to the applicant. It's not a Shire or any other agency's requirements to call upon that, but that is essentially our hope. And I know in the RAR we had, or I had rather, stated that if the application was referred to the DCC EEW and they determined that it was not a controlled action, we would withdraw our objections specifically relating to tuarts and vegetation. So thank you for that. So I understand all the things you've given us. So what is in light of all that comment, and I appreciate that the Shire may not have the expertise on site, etc. But what I'm trying to get my head around is, what was the evidence or the information that you were relying on, or the Shire was relying on,
to form the conclusions that there are these significant concerns from an environmental perspective. And that's what I'm trying to get my head around in terms of, I'm hearing from some experts today here and in material we've got, I'm hearing that the experts in the agency have provided a comment, but the RA says there are significant environmental concerns, but I'm not seeing or hearing the information or evidence of how those concerns are identified or justified through the Shire's actions or investigations.
So we pretty much came to that conclusion based on the fact that it was an intensification of the site, which may have impacts on the fauna and flora. But other than those external referrals and conversations with those federal and state departments, there wasn't really any further internal sort of, I guess you could say, expertise that could determine that there was a significant impact.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
my questions.
Ben, a point of clarification, you made comment about discussions with the Federal Environmental Agency to do with EPBC.
Yep.
There's another number of avenues as to how a proposal can be considered. One is by the applicant, which is a common way. The other one is by the agency actually calling it in as a controlled action. Now, it would appear that as a result of your dialogue with the agency, that position hasn't been adopted. There's no controlled action.
Yes, so they haven't called it in. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So, in your discussion, is there a reason why they haven't called it in?
They didn't specify any reason. Following our discussions with them, they essentially concluded that they would remind the applicant of their obligation, but there was no mention of whether they would or would not actually call it in themselves.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have no further questions.
Councillor Carboni, Councillor Campbell, any further questions to the Shire officers?
No.
All right. Ben, thank you for your responses. All right. Members, we move to the item. We have a recommendation in the RAR to refuse the application. Is someone prepared to move the motion in the RAR? Councillor Carboni?
Can I move the alternative motion?
No, we have to deal with the RAR recommendation first.
Don't have to move it, though.
Sorry?
They don't have to move it,
No. But yeah, we've got, if there's no one prepared to move it, it lapses, and then you're at liberty to move an alternative. So before I get to that, is anyone going to move the RAR recommendation? No? Okay, it's lapsed. Councillor Carboni, you were going to move an alternative?
Yeah, I'll move the alternative motion as worded on page 17, that it be approved. I think the first paragraph's got to have approved inserted in it.
Let's just... Okay. Yep, okay. So is there a seconder for that motion? All right, Councillor Carboni, did you want to talk to the motion?
Yeah, I agree with the three presenters that have presented today with pretty much everything they've said. I'm probably contrary to my fellow colleagues here in this room, at odds with them, but I do know this property very well. I used to part own a property next door to it for quite some time. And getting this property essentially is a used limestone pit, which has been parkland cleared over the years. And the proponent now obviously wants to put an accommodation camp there, which I think is a worthy use for the property, given that the love affair everyone has with Chewits these days, and the fact they can't be cleared for the property to be used for basic raw materials. I guess this is a good use of that property by putting this accommodation village there, which is certainly required in the southwest to accommodate people, to attract workers to the area. Getting to the two issues, the EPA, and I think as a council, we get in trouble every time we get involved in conservation values, or we step outside our lanes and get involved in these sorts of issues rather than planning issues. And I think, given that it's been referred to the state EPA and they didn't see the requirement to assess it, speaks volumes as to it's a worthy use. Accommodation village use is a worthy use amongst these Chewits. It's my understanding that EPBC can call this in at any time anyway, whether the proponent refers it or not. I believe that other parties can, it's my belief, I may be wrong, that other parties can call it in anyway. So as far as that side of it goes, I think it's outside of our realm, and the EPA has dealt with it adequately. And the issues of fire mitigation, as many of you would know, in that area, the subject land is surrounded by vegetable gardens on all of the eastern side of the forest highway. It's surrounded by extractive industry and veggie gardens. On the west, in part of the west side of the forest highway around this property. So you're not going to see the Yarloop style bushfire that was referred to earlier in this area. There was also mention about the one access in and out of the site. Well, Biddingup has one access road, Mile Up has one access road, Kingston has one access road. And you can get out of this on Treadray Road, you can get out heading north through private property. It's not fenced, it's not gated. You can get out there anyway, or just turn right and head straight to the beach if worse comes to worse. So practically speaking, there's ways out. There's three ways out of this property if ever the situation occurs, but you're not going to get that Yarloop type of bushfire there, because there's simply not the canopy there to get that. At best, you'll get a grass fire. So that's my view, and I think it's a worthy project and should go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Carboni. Mr. Hyde?
Yes, thank you. Look, I fully support the proposal, and thank you to Councillor Carboni, because he's actually included some information that I wasn't aware of about the alternate escapes should there be a fire. I agree that as a result of referral to the EPA and it not being formally assessed and the subsequent ratification by the Minister for Environment, this ticks all the boxes. And on top of that, following the SAT hearing, there's been a lot of changes to various management plans, and I think they just add to the ability for us to support this application. The units, nothing we've talked about before, but the units are actually well designed and present very well on site. And I think that's a real bonus for this location. Just going back to bushfire matters, I think the alternate sheltering on site is an appropriate use. For all intents and purposes, this use would operate more like a tourist accommodation facility anyway. So from my point of view, with the management plans in place and the raft of conditions to be imposed, I fully support it. Now, I would like Mr. Presiding Member to go through some of the...
Can you foreshadow that? We haven't asked whether anyone's opposed to it at this point. Okay. So I'd like to, right. Once you finish,
okay, perhaps. I'll foreshadow that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Is anyone
Bear in mind,
opposed?
I only get to speak once.
Sorry?
I only get to speak once.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
can move, I'm going to move a procedural motion
Okay.
for suspension of standing
Okay.
orders
All right.
to enable members to speak more than once. It is a complex application and there's been a lot of background on this, and that's my reason for moving the procedural motion. If there's a seconder.
I'll support that.
Fine. Okay. All those in favour? Is that unanimous? Councillor Carboni? Yes, thank you. All right. All right. Is anyone opposed to the motion and wanting to speak to it? No? Okay. Mr. Heim, I interrupted your.
Thank you. I shall. It's moving to, and I don't know, Mr. Presiding Member, whether you want to deal with each one separately, or I'm going to go through that table that was provided. I can't remember which attachment it was, but in the RAR.
Well, I'd have the floor, so
Okay.
I need to move through the table quickly.
Well,
That's fine. Are we doing them separately or
I'm
doing them separately? Yeah.
so just in condition 5, I'm proposing that be deleted as no trees removed from the site as the applicant suggested, and that condition is unnecessary.
Is there a seconder for that? Anyone opposed to that? There's no one opposed. The motion's carried.
Condition 6. In condition 6, sorry, subcondition C to be removed, deleted.
Okay, and I'll take that as a motion. As a seconder for that. Okay, is anyone opposed to that? No one's opposed. The motion is carried. Sorry.
Just clarification on the reason.
The reason is that condition 3 requires development to be undertaken in accordance with approved plans, which require all existing vegetation buffers to be maintained anyway. Condition 7, to amend that to include the words after Prasamanta shall be installed on site and groundwater levels shall be recorded monthly from June to September and thereafter maintained by the operator, provide evidence of, and take out the words the maximum seasonal. Continues on groundwater levels under the proposed dispersal site, and to take out the words to the satisfaction of the Shire of Harvey and in consultation with the Department of Water and Environmental Regulations.
Seconder for that. Members, are you clear on what's proposed? And is anyone opposed to that?
Speak to it, if I can.
Of course.
I'd just like to speak to that. The reasoning for being supportive of this amendment to this condition or the modification of this condition. I do believe that it provides clarity, and from my perspective, that is important for conditions to be clear about what in fact is the subject of the requirements, and for clarity for the applicant as well as the clearing agency.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'll put that. All those in favour? That's unanimous.
Condition 8, and I will need to refer to the handwritten version.
I think the applicant can provide a copy.
Yeah.
Can we get on the board for everyone to see?
Yeah, we're just going to share.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Oh,
All right. Okay, no, that's good.
You want some spare
Like a
copies?
paper copy of
Yeah.
it?
You okay with that?
The Shire officers, the council see that one on the screen.
So condition 8 is to be replaced with the following. The Tuart and Native Vegetation Protection Construction Management Plan submitted on 4th of October 2024 shall be implemented for the duration of the approval as amended, with the requirement to include a photographic survey of site in its pre-development condition documenting the condition of existing vegetation.
Seconder for that motion? Ms. Lafante. Okay, is anyone opposed to that motion? Or wanting to speak to the motion?
I'll
Speak to it?
Yes, I'll speak to the motion. And my reason for seconding it is that the language that has been provided is an appropriately addresses the matter, and it also provides clarity in terms of the expectation and requirements to be delivered.
Thank you. With that, I'll put that. All those in favour? Conditions.
Carry on. Condition 9 to be deleted. Noting that the Tuart and Native Vegetation Protection Construction Management Plan references the requirements for the surveying of crown zones of Tuart trees and the surveying of in-ground and above-ground infrastructure improvements to avoid all other non-Tuart native trees within the site. That's covered under condition 8 before this condition becomes redundant.
Can I have a seconder for that motion? Ms. Lafante. Is anyone opposed to that? Anyone else wanting to speak to it? If not, no opposition, the motion is carried unanimously.
Condition 11 to be amended so that there are additional words that will read prior to a building permit being issued, detailed engineering drawings, adding words for roads, pedestrian access and parking throughout the site shall be submitted to and approved by the Shire of Harvey, deleting the rest of the condition as published.
For that, Member Lafante. Is anyone opposed to that or wanting to speak to the motion? If not, no opposition, the motion is carried unanimously.
13. This is to remove the first, I think, sentence of the published condition, and it starts with any potable drinking water source from the groundwater on site shall be in accordance with the Department of Water Environment Regulation, Water Quality Protection, Note 41, Private Drinking Water Supplies, April 2015, and the Australian Drinking Water Quality Guidelines 2011. Just saying there's a requirement anyway for.
Seconder for that, Member Lafante. Is anyone opposed to that or anyone else wanting to speak to it?
Yes, I would like to speak to it. I'm comfortable with this amendment. The modifications are appropriate in that they clarify the obligation and noted in the material that currently the information around potable water is not being sought in this particular manner, and how this is actually covered through a separate approval process and separate legislation.
Yeah. Okay. There's no opposition. The motion is carried unanimously.
Position 17 to amend removing part A, which is potable water management plan. As this is already dealt with in a previous condition.
Seconder for that? Is anyone opposed to that? Anyone wanting to speak to the motion? If not, I declare it carried unanimously.
To amend condition 18. Remove the words after any change to the condition and to remove the words and role of the site as a flyover leak stroke staging point and oblique or foraging, oblique nesting area associated with the adjacent high quality bushland to that identified, and goes on the words as documented in the photographic survey of site, pre-development condition, removing the following words and, approved pre-development audit report, and going on to the remainder of the sentence, but removing and role as a flyover staging point and or foraging nesting area associated with the adjacent high quality bushland.
Is anyone opposed to that? Anyone want it? Oh, Councillor Carboni?
Nice to get these amendments in advance. I mean, you're just ramming them through. We don't even know what we're voting on here.
Yeah. Councillor Carboni, they are actually in the agenda.
What page are these amendments, Jane?
One of the attachments.
That you're proposing.
Yeah, I'll
It's I think it's 580 or something like that. I've got the actual date and the number down. Sorry, member.
yes.
Jump in.
Yeah, no, jump in.
I've got it actually specifically because I printed it. So I think it's page 5. I'll get to it. 500, and I am talking about the electronic pages.
Yeah.
So sorry, presiding member. I appreciate it's not my moment to speak, but I'm able to comment about condition 18 should be deleted. Apologise if that wasn't raised with the.
Let's deal with this, Steve, first.
I just want to try and find it's. Wrote it down. Yeah, it's 500 or something.
That's attachment 6, is it?
Is that the applicant's submission letter?
It's page 349. Page 349, Councillor Carboni. Yeah. So yeah, they're not random changes. They're actually were requested by the applicant, previously considered as part of our earlier DAP meeting. Are you able to view it?
49 is a map on off the DAP website agenda.
So on the electronic website, I'm in the electronic website, it is page 389. And it has the header starts response to conditions provided as part of Reg 13.1 alternative recommendation. Revised for mediation.
Councillor Carboni, if you click on attachment 6 in the bookmarks on the side, it will take you straight to the page.
Yeah, I'm on it now. Yeah.
So there's a series of pages there. Sorry, member, through the chair. There's a series of pages there.
So councillor Carboni, we're now at condition 18 of those pages.
Yeah, I'm on it, yeah.
Yep, okay, so you're happy for Mr. Heim to proceed?
Yeah.
Yep,
Well, now
okay.
we can see what we're reading there.
Well, that's good. Mr. Heim.
Well,
So perhaps if you just go through the condition again.
all right. So condition 18 to amend. There it's to remove the words "and role" of the site as a flyover staging point and or foraging nesting area associated with the adjacent high quality bushland identified, including words "as documented" including words the photographic survey of site in its pre-development condition, removing words approved pre-development audit report, and recommended actions to assist with the restoration of the site's condition, and removing the following words "and role as a flyover staging point and or foraging nesting area associated with the adjacent high quality bushland."
That's what I seconded. Member.
And yes, it was seconded by member Lafante. So is anyone opposed to that? Anyone else wanting to speak to it? No? In which case, the motion is carried unanimously.
I have one more. Add condition 19, which is operational management plan. Submitted on the 4th of October 2024 to be maintained and implemented for the satisfaction of the Shire of Harvey.
Okay, so is that a new condition?
Yes.
Okay, so
I'm happy to
Submitted.
second it, but I'd like to have the specifics read out for me. Could you give me the
The
operational
opera-
management plan submitted on the
4th of October 2024 to be maintained and implemented to the satisfaction of the Shire of Harvey.
so that's a new condition. Someone prepare to second that?
I would, and I would also ask it with the mover to clarify that that is a new condition
Yes.
and the other conditions be renumbered.
Figure that out once we've done the minute.
Thank you, sorry.
It will be condition 19.
So,
The numbers will change
Yes.
on your deletion.
Yes.
so members, are we clear on what's proposed? It's a new condition that requires effectively the implementation of the operation management plan, and moved by member Heim and seconded by member Lafante. Is anyone opposed to it? Anyone else wanting to speak to the motion? If not, the motion is carried unanimously. This time, anything else? No. Any other members wishing to modify conditions? Any other member wishing to speak on the item? Member Lafante?
Yes, I would like to speak to the item. Having read all of the material that's been provided and listened to all of the presentations, thank you everybody, including officers from the Shire, and providing that information. I've also reviewed the RA that was submitted as part of attachment 2. From my perspective, I am supportive of this proposal. It is a good proposal in the context of the site. From my perspective, it is consistent with the planning framework and the land use, is discretionary land use and capable of approval on the site. The proposal is well designed. This is a unique workforce accommodation. I have been involved with a number of workforce accommodation proposals, many of which have rows of very small compacted building with very little space around them. And this is an excellent design. It has already been cited today that it has a greater feel of accommodation or tourism accommodation, is very well laid out within its setting. So it's an acceptable design. Materials are also excellent in terms of how they've treated, the design has been treated with the material selection in order to fit it appropriately within its local setting and context. The proposal, I'm satisfied, has addressed all of the environmental matters associated with it and will operate appropriately within its context, and that those matters and associated conditions will be managed in a manner that is suitable for the environmental protection. Overall, I think this is an excellent proposal and worthy of full development, and I'm supportive of it, inclusive of a number of the condition changes that have already been addressed.
Thank you. Any other comments? I will also be supporting the application. As Member Lafante has already indicated, this panel has dealt with many workforce accommodation and they are sophisticated dongers. This is innovative, more focused on lifestyle and respects, in my opinion, the environment and the setting. So from that perspective, I'm prepared to support it. I think it's also consistent with the rural zoning and the planning framework. I must admit I had difficulty believing that the reasons for refusal were sufficient, given that the environmental context, the advice from the Minister of the Environment, the EPA and the appeals convener, also recognising that there has been an opportunity through the EPBC Act for the matter to be called in, which I think probably in my mind indicates the degree of comfort the environmental agencies have about the proposal. I am also influenced by the comments made by Martin Bowman in terms of his experience dealing with Chewett. So I think the environmental matters are appropriately addressed. In terms of bushfire safety, likewise, I think the consultant's approach to it is consistent with what the DAP has approved in other locations. And as Councillor Carbone has indicated, and thank you for that, the local context provides opportunity in the case of emergencies for appropriate emergency evacuation if required. Just a final comment, in terms of the PPC, I accept the concerns raised through the local government, but as this panel has dealt with in other applications, it is separate legislation that should be applied separately. And if through the EPBP's legislation, there's a judgment that this is significant, it will be called in, but that's not a matter for this panel to determine. So I will be supporting the application. Thank you. Now, we probably need to, reinstate standing orders. Yes. So a motion to Member Lafante.
Yep.
Seconded by Mr. Hine. Okay, so procedural to reinstate standing orders. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, so we've reinstated standing orders. We've had a number of motions to modify conditions, and we have a current motion to approve the application with those conditions and amendments. Councillor Carbone, you moved the original motion. Would you like to make any closing comment?
Oh, no, only the fact that it's always difficult with these things when you've got different layers of bureaucracy where one department ends and another one cuts in with regards to all the different issues associated with it. But we got there in the end. So, yeah, no, happy to approve.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carbone. So, as I said, we've got a motion to approve with conditions. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Just finishing off the agenda, Part D, other business. Item 1, SAT applications and Supreme Court appeals. They're listed on the agenda. Item 2, general business. Members, is there any general business? No, in which case the final item is meeting closure. Thank you everyone for your participation. It's been a long meeting, but I think it's been worthwhile. So thank you for your participation, and I declare the meeting closed at 11:10. Thank you again.
Those there, I